At the heart of this story lies empowerment and divine justice. This is a powerful drama centered around standing up to deep-seated racial injustice in a seemingly ordinary but deeply biased community. The plot unfolds through the eyes of a strong Black woman who refuses to be silenced by ignorance, fear, or hate. Her decision to stand up to public humiliation sparks a chain reaction, one that awakens the conscience of a community, shakes hidden systems of oppression, and ultimately leads to a transformation no one expected. This is a story of courage against cruelty, of grace under pressure, and of one voice becoming many. It explores what happens when one person chooses truth over safety, dignity over silence. The core theme is righteous resistance and karmic redemption. Our protagonist faces open racism in a public setting, but instead of shrinking away, she responds with incredible poise, intelligence, and confidence. Her bravery not only shocks the bullies, it goes viral. What follows is a profound shift in how people in her town, and even around the country, confront everyday racism. The world watches and changes. This story is not just about surviving racism. It's about defeating it with truth, integrity, and fearless love for self and community. This story falls under the contemporary drama genre with strong elements of social justice and emotional redemption. It incorporates themes of injustice, silent suffering, public humiliation, and spiritual triumph. It also carries tones of mystery and unexpected reward, which unfold as the narrative progresses, particularly after the protagonist's story goes viral and hidden allies step forward. The dominant emotions in this story are inspiration, righteous anger, and catharsis. The audience will feel the injustice sharply, but they'll also feel uplifted as the protagonist transforms pain into power. Readers should finish the story with a tight chest but hopeful heart, energized by the belief that truth, when spoken boldly, can ripple through even the darkest of systems. The phrase "Black woman stands up to racist bullies" immediately paints a picture of tension and confrontation. But the second half, "Then the world watches what happens next," adds intrigue, surprise, and hope. It subtly suggests that something bigger than revenge is coming, something amazing. This title makes you wonder, what did she do? What happened next? That curiosity is what pulls the reader in. This story promises a high-stakes emotional journey rooted in very real issues: racism, courage, and public redemption. It offers not just entertainment, but empowerment. It tells readers, you are not alone, and your voice matters more than you think. The slap of a milkshake hitting her face silenced the entire food court. A thick, ugly splatter of strawberry and shame ran down her cheek, dripping onto her blazer, her blouse, her soul. Time slowed, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to exhale all at once. The teenager holding the empty cup laughed, loud, cruel, guttural. His friends followed suit, nudging one another as if they had just scored a touchdown in a game where hate was the only currency. And still, she didn't blink. Marcia Lewis stood in the middle of the mall food court, eyes locked on the boy who had thrown the drink. The crowd around her didn't move. Some filmed, some stared. Most just looked away, trying not to get involved. The boy smirked. "Oops, didn't see you there, ma'am." His tone was laced with mock politeness, the kind used to coat cruelty in sugar. He was young, maybe 17, but his face held the smugness of someone who thought the world would never hold him accountable. Maybe because it hadn't. Not yet. Marcia slowly took a breath. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply reached into her purse, pulled out a napkin, and wiped the pink mess from her chin. Her fingers moved with the grace of someone raised by elders who taught her how to hold her head high even when the sky fell. Someone in the back whispered, "Aren't you going to say something?" Marcia didn't respond to them. She looked directly at the boy and said, calmly, powerfully, "I hope this is the worst thing you ever do to someone." He blinked, because it wasn't what he expected. He expected anger, screaming, a scene. Instead, her voice was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that made you feel naked. "What?" I said. She stepped forward, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. "I hope this is the worst thing you ever do to someone. Because if you're not stopped now, someone else is going to pay a much higher price later." The boy's smile faltered. "Not much, but enough. You don't scare me, lady." She smiled. Not cruelly, not bitterly, just knowingly. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to remind you that history is watching. Click. Someone's phone camera turned on with an audible sound. And then another. And then another. The entire food court became a courtroom. A stage. A witness box. The boy turned red. This ain't a big deal. She's overreacting. Is it not a big deal? She asked, tilting her head. His friends started shifting uncomfortably. One of them mumbled, "Come on, let's go." But Marcia wasn't finished. I've been spit at. Called names you wouldn't even say in your sleep. Followed in stores. Laughed at in boardrooms. And today, you threw a milkshake in my face like it was funny. But let me tell you something, young man. Now her voice rose. Not to scream, but to command. You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected every woman who has stood in a room full of people who hate her and still kept her back straight. Every ancestor who was humiliated in silence. Every soul that carried dignity while the world tried to strip it away. She stepped even closer. So go ahead. Laugh. Walk away. Pretend this didn't matter. But remember this moment when someone records your name and the internet starts asking who you really are. Silence. The boy turned and stormed off with his friends, muttering curses under his breath. But the damage was done. Not to her. To him. Because someone had already uploaded the video. Someone had already tagged it. And within seconds, phones all around the food court buzzed with the same notification. Racist teen attacks black woman with milkshake. Her response is pure fire. Marcia stood there, alone in her strawberry-stained clothes, heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. She wasn't used to public scenes. She wasn't used to being a symbol. But something inside her whispered, this moment was meant to happen. And somewhere in the back of the food court, a girl, barely 12 years old, watched Marcia with tears in her eyes. She would remember this moment for the rest of her life. So would the world. Before she became a viral sensation, Marcia Lewis was invisible in plain sight. She wasn't the type to chase cameras or cause scenes. In fact, she spent most of her life doing exactly the opposite, shrinking herself to make others comfortable. She was the kind of woman who over-apologized when someone else bumped into her. The kind of woman who triple-checked her tone in emails. Who smiled when people interrupted her. Who laughed politely at jokes that hurt. But don't get it twisted, she wasn't weak. Just tired. Marcia was 42 years old, single, childless by circumstance, and steadily climbing the ranks in a world that never truly saw her. She had been a lawyer for nearly 15 years, but not the loud, courtroom kind. Her expertise was civil rights litigation, class action suits, policy reform, fighting discrimination with paper, patience, and persistence. She never wanted the spotlight. She only wanted justice. But justice is a quiet mountain, and those who climb it rarely get applause. Born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, Marcia came from a long line of women who knew how to walk through fire without catching flame. Her grandmother, Eloise, had marched in Selma and lost 3 teeth to a police baton. Her mother, Claudine, was one of the first black nurses at St. Vincent's Hospital and worked double shifts for 30 years to make sure Marcia never went to bed hungry. Don't you ever let the world shrink you, Claudine used to say while braiding her daughter's hair. You hear me? You expand. You take up space. But life had a way of chipping at those words, like water carving stone. The prestigious law school Marcia attended didn't see her, not really. Her classmates whispered things like affirmative action and diversity hire behind her back. Her professors assumed she was interested in family law, or maybe public defense, never constitutional rights. Never policy. Never leadership. She proved them wrong, every single time. Graduated top 10%. Clerked for a circuit judge. Published papers. Landed a role at a nonprofit law center in Atlanta that handled civil rights litigation. But the victories were quiet. Settlements, sealed files, invisible wins. Until the mall. That moment. That milkshake. That boy. The internet didn't just see her, it devoured her. Within 24 hours, the video had racked up 3.7 million views. By day 2, it had crossed 10 million, and hashtag Marcia Lewis was trending on every platform. Some dubbed her the milkshake queen. Others called her the calm storm. Celebrities reposted the clip with captions like, "This is Grace under fire." Period. The way she handled that hate. Iconic. Teach this in schools. But not everyone was supportive. Conservative pundits accused her of being overly dramatic. One news anchor asked if she had provoked the attack. Comment sections became battlegrounds. People dug into her past. One website falsely claimed she was fired from a former job for being divisive. It wasn't true, but the lie spread fast. And Marcia? She stayed quiet. She didn't do interviews, didn't clap back, didn't respond to the vitriol. She kept going to work, kept showing up to meetings, kept living. Because this wasn't new. Not for her. The world had always been quick to judge black women. Too loud, too soft, too angry, too silent, too much, never enough. It didn't matter what lane she chose, someone would find fault in her presence. But what no one realized was that the moment in the food court had awakened something in her. A voice, a certainty, a refusal to be small anymore. 2 weeks after the video went viral, Marcia was invited to speak at a youth panel on race and justice in Atlanta. She declined at first, but the organizer, a young black woman named Rochelle, emailed her again. "I grew up thinking dignity meant silence," Rochelle wrote. "But watching you reminded me that we don't have to accept humiliation to stay strong. Please, even 5 minutes would change lives." Marcia read the email twice. Then she said yes. She walked into that auditorium wearing a dark green dress, the color of rebirth, and took the mic with a steadiness that shocked even herself. "I never asked to go viral," she said to the crowd. "But maybe the universe got tired of me hiding." The room erupted in applause. And for the first time in a long time, Marcia felt seen, not for what had happened to her, but for what she stood for. That day changed everything. Offers came in, book deals, speaking engagements, even a podcast invitation from a Supreme Court justice's team. Still, Marcia was cautious. She didn't want fame. She wanted impact. So she chose her next step carefully. She founded an initiative, Dignity Unshaken. Its mission was clear: to teach marginalized youth how to respond to hate with clarity, strength, and strategy. She wasn't interested in being a symbol. She wanted to be a system, a resource, a movement. And as her platform grew, so did the pressure. Because the boy who threw the milkshake? He wasn't done. Not by a long shot. 3 months passed since the milkshake incident, and Marcia Lewis had become something she never intended: a name, a brand, a conversation. Dignity Unshaken was growing faster than expected. Schools reached out, asking her to speak. Colleges wanted her curriculum. Parents sent letters thanking her for giving their children a blueprint on how to stand tall. And yet, for all the good blooming around her, there was an undercurrent, dark, slithering, persistent. It began with an anonymous email. "You think you're untouchable now? Don't get too comfortable." At first, she dismissed it. Trolls were nothing new. As a black woman in law, she'd seen enough veiled threats and passive-aggressive warnings to build a museum. But this felt different. There was a name in the sender's address, Tyler M. 94. That name rang a bell. She did a quick search through the court docket system. There it was, Tyler Matthews, 31, prior arrest for disorderly conduct. And yes, the same man who had thrown that milkshake in her face. No formal charges were filed back then because she didn't press them. The mall banned him. That was supposed to be enough. Apparently, it wasn't. Because Tyler wasn't just bitter, he was calculating. He began a smear campaign. First, small and local. Online forums filled with posts claiming Marcia had provoked the milkshake incident by making anti-white comments before the recording began. They claimed she was race-baiting and manipulating liberal outrage for fame. Then came the edited video. Someone, most likely Tyler, had taken the original clip and spliced it to look like Marcia snapped at the teenager. In this manipulated version, she appeared aggressive, confrontational, even smug. It exploded on right-wing news blogs. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about injustice. It was about cancel culture gone too far. Was the milkshake incident a setup? Asked one popular headline. Marcia's inbox flooded with new threats. Liar. Fraud. We see you, witch. Still, she stayed the course. She wasn't afraid. She was furious. She had given the boy a chance. Chosen grace over vengeance. And now her mercy was being weaponized against her. But worse, young people who had begun to believe in dignity were being shown that the world would always try to drag them down, no matter how noble their stance. One of her students, 16-year-old Elijah, called her in tears. "Ms. Lewis, I tried standing up to a kid who called me slurs. I kept my cool like you taught us. But now he's telling everyone I hit him. And they believed him. I'm suspended." Marcia's heart cracked. She realized then, this wasn't just about her anymore. It was a battle for the message. The media storm kept building. A news channel reached out for her side of the story, but their framing was biased from the start. "We'd love to hear your take on why people feel the original video was misleading," the producer said. "No," she replied coldly. "You'd love to twist it. I'm not giving you the chance." Then came the moment that pushed everything over the edge. A small group of protesters, led by none other than Tyler Matthews, showed up outside her nonprofit office holding signs that read, "Fraud, liar lawyer, stop race hustling." He stood in the middle, smirking for the cameras. "All we want is the truth," he shouted. "All we want is accountability." And the media ate it up. Reporters swarmed. Police stood nearby, but did nothing. After all, they weren't breaking any laws. It was peaceful protest. Marcia watched from inside, gripping a mug of cold tea. She refused to hide. But in that moment, she also knew silence would no longer protect her. She had a decision to make. Her board advised her to lay low. "Let this pass," they said. "It'll burn out." But Marcia knew better. Fires don't burn out. They spread, unless you douse them with truth. So she called a press conference. It was a crisp Monday morning when Marcia stepped in front of a dozen reporters outside the same building the protesters had stood by just days earlier. This time, the crowd was mixed: supporters, skeptics, journalists, and teens wearing Dignity Unshaken t-shirts. She stood behind the mic with calm conviction. "I did not ask for attention. I did not invite conflict. But I will not be erased from the truth of what happened, nor from the work we are doing because of it." Flashes popped. She continued, "I offered grace in that mall. I chose not to press charges against a boy who didn't understand the weight of what he did. But now that same person is leading a campaign to discredit not just me, but every young person who's trying to live with dignity and courage in a world that punishes them for both." Then she dropped the bombshell. "I've filed a defamation lawsuit against Tyler Matthews and those who've knowingly spread false information about me." Gasps. "This isn't about vengeance. This is about justice. And if that makes me a target again, so be it. I will not bend." The clip went viral again. But this time, it wasn't just rage. It was respect. The tide began to turn. News networks issued corrections. Allies rallied. Students wrote essays about courage. Celebrities donated to Dignity Unshaken. And Marcia? She slept better that night than she had in months. But Tyler? He wasn't done fighting. Because he had one more card up his sleeve, and it would shake everything. Tyler Matthews wasn't a man who gave up easily. And when the world began to see through his lies, his desperation grew fangs. A week after Marcia's press conference, his smear campaign took an uglier, more personal turn. This time, it wasn't about twisted videos or loud protests. It was about digging into her past. He hired a private investigator. And what the investigator found was a ghost. Marcia's brother, Damian Lewis. A name that hadn't been spoken publicly in over 15 years. He was the one part of her life she never talked about, not in speeches, not in interviews, not even in the quiet circles of trust she kept close. Damian had been incarcerated at 19 for armed robbery. He served 9 years. When he got out, he vanished from her life completely. Not because she rejected him, but because he rejected himself. The shame, the guilt, the belief that he'd tainted their family legacy, it drove him into silence. Marcia had never hidden the fact that her life had seen storms. But this particular chapter, she simply left out. Not because she was ashamed of Damian, but because the world was cruel to nuance. It wouldn't see a rehabilitated brother. It would see a weapon. And Tyler? He turned it into a blade. He went live on a podcast known for its inflammatory content. "Let's talk about who Marcia Lewis really is," he sneered. While she's out here lecturing America on virtue and grace, her own brother was robbing people at gunpoint. Where was her dignity then? The host laughed. He continued, "You really think this is someone we should be giving awards to? Giving TED Talks? Nah, she's a fraud. Her whole brand is built on a lie." The clip made its rounds fast. "Dignity by day, crime by night," read one headline. "Is Marcia Lewis hiding a criminal in her closet?" screamed another. Social media turned into a battlefield. Supporters fought back, but the damage was done. Marcia's inbox flooded with reporters asking for a comment. Her staff panicked. Donors hesitated. Speaking engagements got postponed. Even people who believed in her began to ask questions. Was she really hiding something? That night, Marcia sat alone in her living room, staring at the framed photo of her and Damien from when they were kids. Her hands trembled, not with fear, with clarity. She picked up her phone and made a call she hadn't dared to make in years. Damien. Her voice cracked. There was a long pause. Then a sigh. Hey, sis. Tears rolled down her face. I need you. A few days later, she stood before another crowd, this one larger than any before. Her nonprofit's annual Youth Rising Gala had become a high-profile event, and despite the controversy, the hall was full. The cameras were rolling. I want to talk to you tonight, she said. Not just as Marcia the lawyer, or Marcia the activist, but Marcia the sister. A hush fell over the room. She held up a photo of her and Damien as children. This is my brother. His name is Damian Lewis. When he was 19, he made a choice that changed his life. He was arrested and served time. And for a long time, we didn't talk about it. Not because I was ashamed of him, but because I knew you would be. She paused. But now I see that silence is a betrayal. Not of him, but of you. The young people who are being told that one mistake makes you unworthy of redemption. She turned toward the curtain. Damien, come out here. Gasps. Murmurs. Out stepped Damian Lewis. Tall, composed, quiet. His suit was modest. His eyes heavy with both memory and redemption. He walked to the mic and spoke for the first time in public in over a decade. I was a kid who thought violence made me strong. I learned the hard way it doesn't. Prison didn't rehabilitate me. My sister did. Not with lectures. With letters. With reminders that I was still human. And that I could still rise. He looked at her. Then back at the crowd. Marcia didn't hide me. I hid myself. And tonight, I'm done hiding. The room erupted into a standing ovation. Marcia's tears came freely now. Not of grief, but of reclamation. That night, the tide didn't just turn. It transformed. Media outlets were forced to change their narrative. Marcia Lewis, a story of forgiveness, redemption, and truth. The podcast that aired Tyler's attack lost sponsors. Supporters doubled down. Donations to Dignity Unshaken tripled in 48 hours. A national conversation bloomed about formerly incarcerated individuals and their right to be more than their worst moment. And Tyler? He posted one final video. You all think this woman's a hero? She's just better at hiding things. But this time, no one listened. No one reposted it. His voice echoed into a void of irrelevance. The lawsuit Marcia filed against him proceeded without much media coverage, but the verdict came swiftly. Guilty of defamation. Ordered to pay damages. When the judge handed down the decision, she said, Mr. Matthews, in your attempt to destroy Ms. Lewis's reputation, you amplified it instead. Justice is not about loudness. It's about truth. And so, in the courtroom where Tyler once smirked, he now sat defeated. While Marcia Lewis stood taller than ever, not just in the eyes of the law, but in the hearts of a generation. In the weeks that followed the verdict, Marcia Lewis did not retreat into silence or savor the victory in solitude. She expanded her organization's mission. Dignity Unshaken began partnering with reintegration programs for the formerly incarcerated. Damien became one of its lead mentors, working with at-risk youth and giving talks in juvenile centers, not as a cautionary tale, but as living proof that the cycle could be broken. She returned to courtrooms, not just to defend clients, but to change laws. Marcia launched a campaign called the Second Chance Bill, aimed at reforming expungement protocols and reducing systemic barriers for those who had served their time. News anchors who once doubted her now praised her courage. She didn't gloat, though. She didn't need to. The real victory wasn't the verdict. It was the vindication of truth. One evening, as the sun set over her modest home in Atlanta, Damien sat with her on the back porch. You sure you want to keep doing this? He asked, watching her scroll through speaking requests, policy drafts, and interview invitations. She looked at him and smiled gently. I have to, she replied. Because if I stop now, that means they win. He nodded. I just don't want you to burn out again. She leaned her head against his shoulder. This time, I'm not alone. That was the moral heartbeat of it all. Redemption is not a solo act. It's a symphony of courage, truth, and second chances. Marcia's journey reminded the world that even when you're mocked, maligned, or misrepresented, if your integrity remains intact, no lie can erase your light. Tyler Matthews eventually faded from public view. His platform crumbled, his sponsors vanished, and even his old allies distanced themselves. His downfall wasn't dramatic. It was slow, quiet, like the crumbling of a house built on a foundation of sand. But Marcia's rise? It was rooted, it was earned, and it was far from over. At the next Youth Rising Gala, thousands of young people stood and chanted her name, not because she was flawless, but because she was fearless. In her final speech that night, she said, "They tried to break me with my past, but they didn't understand. My past made me. My scars don't make me weak. They make me real." If you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or discarded, remember this. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You just have to stand. And with that, the woman they laughed at became the one they learned from. The one they tried to silence became the voice of a movement. The one they underestimated rewrote the narrative for all who came after her. Because truth, when lived with courage, does not whisper. It roars.